Welcome to 100 Days in Kenshi, the movie. Or at least I hope this video will be long enough to be called a movie. To start these 100 days, I will only have control of one character, Zote, a skeleton whose name is a reference to something. Write it down in the comments if you found it out, and don't just Google it. Or do, I'm not your mother. Right now, Zote is what could be called a massive skill issue. With stats all at 1 or 0, our tall robot boy is a bit of a fixer-upper. Luckily for Zote, the hub just so happens to have a small sack with items that you can just take and sell to the nearby bar. This is especially useful since repairs are not cheap, and a skeleton repair kit is going to be needed to stop Zote's 1 toughness from causing him to bleed out from a paper cut. I also made sure to buy a crossbow and some bolts. This will allow Zote to fight at some capacity, despite his current case of profound mental retardation. After getting some starting equipment, I immediately started heading towards the nearest city that has more than 2 functioning buildings. The city of Squin is very useful for early game progression, with powerful guards, a nearby copper node, and several recruits with higher than average starting stats. Not that I will be recruiting any of them though. Zote manages to reach Squin without issue and, after ignoring the blatant racism of the town guards, proceeds to pick a lock through a wall before leaving to mine copper, because I cannot be bothered spending 30 minutes picking up and putting down bowls to become a master thief. Luckily, copper mining is interrupted when a group of wild Garu wander near the city and are killed by the guards. After taking and selling the meat and leather, Zote has enough money to buy a small backpack and a cool cape. With these new items, I felt confident in beginning step 2 of 3 to make Zote less pathetic. Are racist, sexist, and probably homophobic bigots that will kill him on sight. While passing a local mine, Zote attracts the attention of some of the guards, who promptly lose their shit and try to kill him. Luckily, I am a master of the most powerful weapon in all of Kenshi, running away. By utilizing this advanced technique, Zote is able to escape from all but one guard as he reaches the Deadlands. Inhospitable to all forms of organic life, this will be the perfect place for him to take a stand. Well, that works too, I guess. With that guy out of the way, the path is clear to Black Desert City, where Zote meets the first member of his crew, Sad Neil, so called because he is sad and also has a case of profound mental retardation. After some peer pressure, Sad Neil agrees to join Zote for a modest fee of absolutely nothing, and the group make ready to leave the Deadlands for the Great Desert, where, after lots of running away, they finally face their first real foe, a manhunter. These relatively weak enemies can be found patrolling in medium-sized groups around the United City's territory, and while initially passive, if a character under your control becomes close to them, one of them will break off from the group in an attempt to enslave your entire party. After a lot of micro, the manhunter finally goes down and is looted for all he is worth. Zote attempts to sell him into slavery, but the slave master recognizes his own and refuses to buy him, so I just put him in a cage. This gives no money, but makes Manhunter a slave, so it's all worth it in the end. Now, all that remains in my plan is to find the city of Heng, where the only bank in Kenshi is located. Sometime wandering around later, I found Heng. But remember when I said I cannot be bothered to spend 30 minutes cheesing and becoming a master thief? Well, now Zote cannot break into the bank. With my prospects of endless wealth already over, I leave for the city of Mongrel in the Fog Islands. Plenty of running away, and only one near-death moment later, I finally reach my destination. If you're wondering why I did not recruit Ruka, this is why. To let Zote and Sadneil not be pushovers, I will be power leveling combat skills using the Fogmen. This has many advantages, so I'll go down the list now. 1. Fogmen do not eat skeletons. 2. Fogmen have low stats, allowing weak characters to get their foot in the ladder. 3. Fogmen do very little damage due to their weak weapons. 4. Fogmen use blunt weapons. 5. Fogmen princes award a 6,000 cat bounty upon being killed, allowing you to pay for repairs. And 6. Fogmen will mostly ignore skeletons that are laying low. But enough talking, let's get to the training montage. Enjoyed the training montage. Now that Zote and Sadneil have stats in the 40s and 50s, they can stop running away from everything, and I can stop having to painfully micro every backyard bar fight they happen to get into. The newly forged dynamic duo quickly proved their competence by killing an iron spider with almost no issues, and sparring a broken skeleton on equal terms as they pass through obedience. After a close call with some shrieking bandits as they enter the floodlands, they arrive at the cannibal capital, where, as usual, dozens of cannibals are fighting each other. I don't know if this is vanilla or from a mod that adds extra world states, but it makes for some really cool cinematic shots, so I'm not complaining. After the fighting is mostly over, I start to move Zote and Sadniel to the Cannibal Grand Wizard, but they are interrupted by a cannibal patrol that wanders into them, and they end up wandering near some more cannibals who join the fight. As both sides slowly wander to the middle of the capital, even more cannibals join in. At the end of this mess, several dozen cannibals have been taken down, and I decide to go after a smaller bounty first. Picking up some cannibal chiefs, I go out to find somewhere to turn them in, and in the process, end up in Bast. Naturally, I decide to drop the cannibal chiefs, and start looking for a nice scrap to level up combat skills even more. One quick fight with some outlaw farmers later, I meet a corrupt samurai who asks Zote to prostrate himself. Since I was looking for a fight anyways, I decide to tell her to go fuck herself. The fight is close and lasts almost half a day, but with the magic of repairs, Zote ends up the victor, and starts heading to the Great Desert, where I grab some better equipment before traveling to World's End. Not finding anything of use, I start to go back to the Cannibal Plains for a second attempt at the Grand Wizard. Plenty of fights and several dozen dead cannibals later, I reach the village of one of the minor cannibal tribes, where I cheese thievery levels and grab some of the great loot that they had. Giving Zote one of the katanas to level up his dexterity, I get back to the cannibal capital and finally manage to isolate and defeat the Cannibal Grand Wizard, before helping myself with some of the amazing loot in the various houses, including several skeleton smith weapons and a masterwork ranger. After a day of travel and several minor fights, Zote finally reaches the city of Stoat, where he turns in the Grand Wizard for a 40,000 cat bounty, and heads back to Hang to buy a house for storage, where I am lucky enough to find Harmatho, who really hates skeletons. By talking to her twice, I cause her entire caravan to try and kill me. Naturally, since he is the aggressor, the police take my side, and the Sonovi thieves also end up fighting the guards for some reason. Making the best of the situation, I quickly buy a house and research storage chest, putting away my cannibal loot and selling most of an entire caravan's worth of loot to help fund weapon upgrades, before putting the rest of the spoils into chests for safekeeping. I then proceed to completely forget about the massive amount of loot stashed away in Hang, and ignore it for the rest of the 100 days. After storing the spoils of abusing other people's hatred, I have Zote move down towards Eye Socket to try and find Ray, a unique Hive soldier recruit. However, I don't end up finding him. I instead go to Brink, but don't find anything there either, and, right after leaving Brink, a group of mercenaries try to mug Zote, which goes about as well as you would expect. After reaching Stobe's Gamble, I decide to try fighting a Leviathan, which also goes as well as you would expect. One quick stop in Spring later to mark it on a map, Zote heads to his final destination. Zote again heads to his final destination. Human themselves. They act just like Fogmen and cannibals, taking away downed non-skeleton characters and bringing them to a certain location where they will kill them. Unlike cannibals and Fogmen, however, they are quite strong, enjoying 200 HP, stats in the 50s, and high-quality weapons. The only weakness that they have is that they can be killed when downed, which is very useful, considering their 10% bleed rate and high toughness mean they will almost never die naturally. Because they do not attack skeletons by default, Zote and Sadniel are able to just walk in, and, after being called a sick fuck by a robot wearing a suit made of human skin and barbed wire, and having a chat with their leader, Savant, Zote and Sadniel begin their second training arc. With their second training arc complete, padding their skills quite a bit, Zote and Sad Neo head to Brink again to rest and repair, but are stopped by the ruling noble, Lady Sugi, who tells them that they smell like Sid, which makes sense, considering they just spent almost a week fighting robots wearing human skin. However, Sad Neo is having none of it, and tells her to fuck off, beginning a very rough history with the United Cities throughout the entire 100 days. After getting released from jail, Zote and Sad Neo go to Black Desert City and pick off Razor to try and fix relations. While this does not help relations that much, it does give 10,000 cats and lets Sad Neo repurchase a staff. After beating up some blood raiders near Spine Canyon to test the new weapon, Zote and Sad Neo loot a tower in the Floodlands and another cannibal village, before going to World's End to sell the loot, where they encounter a very lucky find, a naturally spawned skeleton recruit, Serval. After recruiting him for only 5,000 cats, Zote breaks into a headgear shop to steal blueprints for later use. Once the sun rises again, the newly formed trio grab some better equipment with their loot and head to Bass to train Serval, where they immediately find a massive Holy Nation patrol led by an Inquisitor. The battle is hard fought and lasts several hours, but eventually the trio managed to win. And by that, I mean Zote and Sad Neo managed to win, since Serval got knocked down almost immediately. After a second battle in Endon that kills the few remaining residents, and a few inconsequential battles with local cannibals, I find one last massive Holy Nation patrol, this time only led by a paladin and mostly made of chaff. This actually ends up being the hardest of the three, as I end up needing to micro Zote and Sad Neo to prevent Serval from dying due to his low toughness. But with Serval's trial by fire complete, I head back south to look for good loot and settlement locations. Once I get back to Venz, I find a tower full of thralls. I also find Agnew, a unique skeleton recruit that has 50 strength, is the only recruitable soldier bot in Vanilla Kenshi, and Beep's best friend. After a short battle, both Screamer and Ponk are downed, and I take their Meito weapons before looting the tower for several ancient science books and 2 AI cores, as well as recruiting Agnew. I then leave to find a place to leave the loot and turn in the bounties, eventually reaching the city of Katun, where I try to steal from the Shinobi thieves because they all got arrested. But Zote is not high level enough to pick the level 100 safe that they have. So I just buy some building materials and a little house to store everything, before also forgetting about this stash and wondering where the Meitos are for the rest of the 100 days. I also visit the Katun Scrap Masters, but don't find the weapon I'm interested in. Finally, I start the journey to find a new place to make an outpost, which is long enough for an exploration montage. After settling on a location to make my base, I decide to go to Crab Town and join the Crab Raiders. This allows the boys to have someone on their side, as Crab Raiders will now not only not attack, but actively follow around and defend my characters. However, the Skin Bandits, Skeleton Bandits, and Reavers are now my enemies and cannot be allied with. Though it doesn't really matter, considering that they all attack me anyways, and the Skin Bandits already hate me. After joining the Crab Raiders, I go to Iron HQ to heal using the repair beds. But since the Skeleton Bandits are hostile now, they end up attacking and start a battle that lasts nearly 30 minutes, where even their leader, the Elder, joins in. Sadly, due to his old age, he trips and falls on the stairs and is put in a coma. Luckily, he had a organ donor card on him. How do I know this, you ask? Because I put it there. Anyways, after reclaiming his brain for science, and reclaiming his Meitao sword, also for science, I then take all the loot from Iron HQ and repair everyone to full health, before heading to Tech Hunter City of Black Scrats and buying everything needed to start research on the base using the Elder's generous donation and putting away the loot from Iron HQ, leaving Serval to work on research. I have the rest of the boys go exploring, looting an army where they managed to find a Edgewalker 1 quality iron stick, May 2 quality iron stick 1 Chris, before heading to the nearby Reaver camp where they end up losing and are enslaved, which just gives me the perfect opportunity to destroy the camp from the inside out. As damage repaired like it never happened, the Reavers are slowly taken down in a battle of attrition. After I wrap up most of the Reavers, I grab some more valuable items from nearby houses and try to free some of the slaves, but they just go back into their cages, so I use them to grind lockpicking levels on Zote instead. Before heading back to Serval to meet up and go again to Brink, using the lockpicking levels I gained by cheesing Reaver slaves, I have Zote get some revenge on Lady Shugi by breaking into her home and stealing a bunch of random stuff. Fleeing the scene, the boys head back to the Great Desert to find the city far enough to fence the stolen goods. Zote tries robbing the bank and heft again. This time he gets past the guards and the locks, but his thievery level is not high enough to guarantee that he can steal items without getting caught, so I have to call it off. Traveling to the city of Stoat next, I managed to fence the items in a Tech Hunter-owned ranger shop before going back to Mongrel, passing Bast in the process, and taking down some Holy Nation patrols to get that little bit of an edge on training. Help some hungry bandits to increase my relation with them to -5 from -10, and walk into a random Holy Nation farmer's house, scaring him, refusing to elaborate, then leaving. Eventually I arrive at the Fog Islands, pick up some prince heads to sell, and get to Mongrel, selling the heads and recruiting Finn, a modded skeleton recruit. Then the game crashes again, so we are back at Black Scrats at day 46. This time I go and get revenge on the mercenaries that tried to mug Zote earlier, and manage to rescue not one, but 2 Reaver slaves who joined the boys. One quick stop at the smuggler's bar to get some food and first aid kits later, I take a more direct path to Mongrel through Vane, and manage to get 6 prince heads on my way to the city. But one of the freed slaves loses a leg, so I use the money to get a new leg and a big house. I also make sure to recruit Beep now that I'm strong enough to defend him, then buy equipment for the 2 slaves, now called Hayden and Holden, as well as Beep, and I make sure to re-recruit Finn. With 4 new members of the boys, it's time for another training montage. Okay, so I actually forgot to record days 52 to 57, so I'll just summarize them right now. I got bored of making bandanas and beating up Fogmen, so I headed down to the swamps, grabbed some Hessies, and then sold it at World's End. Oh, also I got another recruit, who I rescued from the Fogmen when I was leaving Mongrel. And that's about it. Okay, so anyways, I went to Black Scratch again and bought a Garu, who I named Pinky, and loaded Pinky up with all sorts of supplies needed to set up a base. And then I went down to that spot in the crags I had marked earlier and started working on it. So now it should be time for a base building montage. Hopefully longer than the last one, since that was kind of sad.